Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by Cara Connect. Today, we're going to talk about how we can break barriers and build an inclusive workplace for LGBTQ plus mental well-being. The month of June is Pride Month, where LGBTQ plus communities come together and celebrate their freedom to be themselves. And for those of you who are struggling with the acronym, what LGBTQ stands for, it is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning. And the plus stands for others, specific sexual or gender minorities. 2023 marks a series of anniversaries of important events in the history of Pride and LGBTQ plus rights in Dublin. It is the 50th anniversary of the first LGBTQ plus group in Dublin, the sexual liberation movement in Trinity College, and the 40th anniversary of the famous March to Fairview Park, and the first Dublin Pride Parade, and also the 30th anniversary to decriminalization of homosexuality in Ireland. And it is my hope that during this webinar, we will all learn and understand more about the challenges faced by the LGBTQ plus individuals struggling with their mental health in the workplace. I also hope we can learn some strategies to create an inclusive and supportive work environment. I hope we will learn some strategies to create an inclusive and supportive work environment, and also how we can implement practical approaches to promote LGBTQ plus mental well-being. We will talk about how we can develop inclusive policies and practices to support LGBTQ plus employees, and how to drive positive change and foster an inclusive culture. Hopefully, we will also gain insights into the experience of LGBTQ plus employees. Overall, the goal of this webinar is to enlighten each and every one of us, educate us and support us in getting access to valuable resources for supporting LGBTQ plus mental well-being. I want to mention there will hopefully be a space for 2 to 3 questions at the end. So I would like to encourage you all to write any questions you might have for us in the Q&A tab, not to be mixed with the comment tab, but you can see the Q&A tab below the photo, the picture. And we will try to address those at the end of this webinar. So it is my great honor to introduce Rachel Skelly. Rachel is the Mutual Respect Officer at IADT. Rachel's primary role is to create a culture of respect and safety for all staff and students at IADT. Her background in sexual violence prevention has given her expertise in promoting cultural change across the higher education sector. They have been hugely involved in embedding equality, diversity, and inclusion into a mandatory module for all first-year students of IADT. And they are one of the founding members of the Queer Staff Network of IADT. It doesn't take much digging to discover that Rachel, already in college, was elected the Students' Union's Gender Equality Officer. I also found an online interview with Rachel from 2017, where they said that 2 of the college's greatest weaknesses concerning welfare were its neglect of the counseling and mental health services, which they said at the time were vastly underfunded. I wonder if that's changed. In 2017, Rachel criticized overly long waiting times for regular and emergency counseling, which could at the time run up to 8 weeks. And this resonates so well with us at Cara Connect and the things we are trying to achieve with our services. And I think Rachel's foresight is a good starting point for our conversation. But before that, I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Kristín Einarsdóttir Scobie, and for the past 3 years, I've been working with Cara Connect. I am an innovative health consultant, social change strategist, and a health advocate. And one of my largest roles at Cara Connect is to link us to all the amazing professionals we work with and who are the heart of our services. My own educational background is occupational therapy and public health science. I do hold a second master's from Trinity College in race, ethnicity, and conflict studies and international peace studies. I hold extensive health and welfare sector experience on an international level and an expertise in innovative digital health transformation. I am beyond excited and thankful for the opportunity to speak to Rachel Skelly about how we can build an inclusive workplace for everybody, but with a special focus on LGBTQ plus mental well-being. So welcome, Rachel. But before I get to the questions, I think it's worth providing some background facts on inclusivity and mental well-being in the workplace. So it is well known that diverse organizations outperform less diverse competitors in revenue, profits, and employee satisfaction. This we know. We also know that companies that prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, they are in fact 6 times more likely to meet or exceed financial targets. But there's always the but. So hiring individuals from different backgrounds to maintain diversity, that is only sustainable with a culture of inclusion that genuinely welcomes in all individuals for who they are and encourage everyone to succeed at work. And research show that 76% of today's job seekers and employees consider a company's diversity and inclusion when deciding where to apply for jobs. And 55% of HR professionals say that promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion is a top priority for their organization. But having said that, Deloitte in 2020 found that 61% of employees have witnessed or experienced discrimination at work, and 57% of employees believe that companies should do more diversity. So Rachel, based on these statistics, I would like to start my first question by asking you, what do you think are the biggest challenges faced by LGBTQ plus individuals in today's workplace?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the lovely introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I think at the moment, one of the key things that we need to look at is gender identity. It is the kind of core of the next step of the queer movement. Also, sorry for context, I prefer the term queer when I discuss the community, but I understand that is not everyone's choice of words. So I will try and flip between LGBTQIA+ and queer during this. So yeah, I think gender identity, we're hoping at the moment that we're seeing a bit of a move away from the traditional idea that you have to experience gender dysphoria. And within the kind of queer and trans communities at the moment, we're trying to focus in on gender euphoria. And this idea of how, you don't need to be sad and depressed in order to identify as trans or non-binary, but that it can just bring you joy. So I think that's a massive piece that we're trying to move forward, is to shift the narrative around what it means to be kind of trans and non-binary. And then continue.
No. Has that been the case? I'm just curious. Has that been the case that you need to, explain in details, and people have been really judgmental about how you explain yourself, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in order to, if you want to access gender affirming care, you have to go through kind of psychological evaluations and be determined as having gender dysphoria. Whereas we would like to see it move towards an idea of you can experience gender euphoria.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were to receive this gender affirming care.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that leads me to the next question is that, I mean, if you're a part of an organization or a company, how, in your opinion, how can an organization foster a culture of respect, inclusivity, and belonging that may leverage the diverse perspective and experiences of all the employees?
Well, I think first of all is talk to your queer staff.
Yeah.
Remember intersectionality within this, that everyone has different experiences based on who they are as a person, that you can be more than just queer. And to recognize the different way that people experience things based on the multitude of identities that they hold.
Mm-hmm.
But it's talk to your queer and LGBTQIA plus staff. And then I think we really need to focus back in on moving beyond these kind of ideological conversations and really get into the action.
Yeah.
Because the best thing that you can do to support your staff is to take action.
Right. And you know, how can we also, you know, I'm really curious about this. So how can we ensure that policies and practices they are inclusive of and supportive of LGBTQ individuals? I'm struggling with the word. English is not my first language, but I mean, we know that while 74% of organizations, they say they have their DEI in order, and with that, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but only 32% of them have metrics to sort of in place to measure the effectiveness of those initiatives. And the same, I mean, I can relate this also just to general employee well-being. Companies are saying, well, we have employee well-being in place, employee health well-being in place. But if you can't measure it, and it's probably really difficult to measure this. But my question basically is, how can we ensure that what we implement is working? Mm-hmm. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Absolutely, and it's a fantastic question. So I suppose one of the key things is you have to be surveying your staff.
Yeah.
So a kind of cultural climate survey, and that goes beyond just LGBTQIA issues. It goes into race and ethnicity, disability, general well-being within the workplace. Really, really important to be conducting these relatively regularly. Mm-hmm. And to put in place an action plan. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but if you can do a cultural climate survey, see what's happening, see what people are saying, and use that information to create an action plan. Just put things down, and then once you have that in place, you can use that for your metrics. Yeah. So you can kind of cross correlate between your cultural climate surveys that you're doing maybe every 2 years and your action plans, and you're seeing what's working, what's not working, what can we improve on, what areas have we missed in moving forward. And it's also really helpful in terms of getting buy-in, that if you are checking in with your staff and seeing what's going on the ground, that when you're bringing in these initiatives, you can say, well, we're doing this because we're listening. Exactly. And because we want you to direct us, we want to do what you want to do. And it's again kind of giving that power back to your employees in terms of it's their directive of what it is that we're implementing.
Absolutely, it's so important. But I'm also thinking of training. So I mean, in Ireland you have mental health first aid training. Is there anything similar for inclusivity in the workplace? Do you know of anything?
Yeah, so, well, I suppose in Ireland, I mean, one of the most fantastic organisations is TENI, and they focus on gender identity and trans awareness and celebration. There's a few organisations that do run training for staff and for students if you're in the higher education sector. For ourselves in IADT, we run training on gender identity, we run training on queer theory, and we run training for both staff and students because I think it's really important that everyone across your organization has the same vernacular in how we discuss this, because one of the pieces I think that can be a massive barrier in terms of our discussions is that people are afraid to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And, there's very rarely any malice involved in that. And it just kind of prevents people from opening up in that discussion because they don't want to cause any harm to anyone. So if we can roll out training and even, poster campaigns that explain what these terms mean, it gives people a little bit more confidence in their ability to have those conversations.
I am absolutely agreeing with that, and that would make me more comfortable, and it's leading to my next, which is my favorite question. How can we help leaders to get comfortable, or even the employees to get comfortable with being uncomfortable? Because this is a very uncomfortable issue, or, I don't know what to call it even for many. So how can we support our employees to be uncomfortable?
Yeah. So I think there has to be a recognition that we don't expect you to know everything. No, like I still am learning constantly. We were looking at the different flags the other day, and there were flags that I have no idea what they are. And it's a recognition that it's okay to ask that question if you're coming from a kind place. And I suppose trying to find ways that you can create a culture in which it's okay to ask questions, to have questions asked of you, and then to be open to being corrected and to learn.
Yeah.
We actually ran a really gorgeous event for our students at Halloween where they were doing a pumpkin carving, and we had different questions and answers around different terms stuck to the bottom of the pumpkins, and then they had to go around and find the answer and their match, and it was really gorgeous. But one of the things that was so beautiful about it was I saw students coming out to their peers because they had the language, they had the definition of the term in front of them, and they said, "This is me." And it made it more accessible for them to come out, and it made it more accessible for their peers to ask questions and to say, "Wow, I didn't understand that was what that meant. Thank you so much for sharing." And so it was this really beautiful space where you could ask questions and you could come out and you could come forward and talk about your identity in a really nice and safe way. So if you can foster conversations like that and foster a culture where those conversations are open and kind, then we're minimizing that discomfort.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, people are, even though they don't consider the knowledge, I mean, if they're making an effort, that's what counts. I mean, be curious.
Yes.
And apart from the resources, we've been talking a little bit about training. Are there any specific tools or resources you would recommend for an organization looking to enhance LGBTQ plus mental well-being in their own workplace?
Well, I suppose, reach out to the local organizations. So, we have Tenny, we have Shout Out, we have Belong To. There's a lot of organizations that specialize in delivering these trainings and kind of producing resources for people. One of the key things that I think is really important is if you are doing surveys, if you are asking people, to disclose their identities, make sure that you include all of the identities within that survey. One of the things that we see quite frequently in kind of, say, even if we look at asking questions around gender identity, is we have the male, female, prefer not to say. And that can be really detrimental for people who have chosen an identity that fits outside of that, but they do want to say. So it's about including, the full list of gender identities. It's about including a full list of sexual orientations when you're asking those questions, and not being afraid to have a long list. I know in terms of survey terms, we prefer not to have super duper long lists, But when it comes to recognizing and appreciating people's identities, it's really important that we have space to ask them.
Yeah. So there are some questions coming in. And I want to address the first one. So people are asking if we can provide a full list of gender identity and orientation. We'll absolutely do that. And also the resources that Rachel is mentioning, I'll make sure you get all of you get access to those. And then there's not really a question, but I'm going to read it. So one participant is saying companies steer clear from DEI strategies because they cannot see a tangible ROI, especially in recession like the one we have right now. Okay, there is a question. How can we convince companies to do DEI even if they can't measure it fully to show ROI for the business?
So I think one of the key things is that this provides psychological safety to your staff. I know in the long run, it will prevent extended sick leave. It will allow your staff to fully engage in a meaningful way in the workplace. And, you know, as much as I would like to say it's the right thing to do, as we've seen from the figures, it does help with the profits. You know,
it does. And at the end of the day, that's what counts.
Yeah, you know, it generates innovation, it generates collaboration, and it creates a better sense of well-being for your staff. And so I think if you can frame it in that way, that's really helpful. But again, and this I think comes back to the metrics of if you can show that your actions have an impact, that your training initiatives are impactful, by, you know, doing surveys afterwards and doing those cultural climate surveys, if you can have internal data that backs up the kind of more global data, then that will really help to build that case.
I absolutely love that. We have another question. This one is really good. So do you have any advice for someone who is a member of the LGBTQIA plus community themselves and want to encourage their employer to take up these policies, but is concerned about coming out? That's so valid, because I'm guessing many are so concerned about coming out to their leaders.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that question. It's a really vulnerable and honest question, so thank you. So I would say hopefully your organization has an EDI or DE&I team that you can go and speak to. So I sit on that, I'm part of our EDI office in IADT, but I also sit in HR, and you can go and speak to HR about this and see what they can do. I think another way to do it, so when we were setting up our queer staff network in IADT, it was a group of colleagues. We were actually doing a course in ISL, which is Irish Sign Language. And during that, you know, we were meeting up and we were chatting, and we kind of started to get the sense that there was, you know, we were all a little bit queer. And so we came together, and it was this group that came together, that came forward and said, you know, we would really like to set up a queer staff network. We were really lucky that we had our president, David Smith, was massively supportive. And, you know, that was absolutely fantastic. So have a look around and see, is there anyone else in your community that can help you and that you can join together to come forward and ask for this. And again, in most queer staff networks or LGBTQIA plus staff networks, it is open to both queer staff and allies. And that's a really, really important piece, is that you open it up to allies as well. So that we are not inadvertently outing anyone who doesn't necessarily want to be out to their employer.
So good, Rachel, really good. So time is flying, really. So what can we take from this, our webinar today? I think at least in today's workplace, ensuring that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts include all individuals who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, plus other sexual gender identities. We know that it is essential for business success. Talented candidates have many options, and it's no secret that they are analyzing which businesses provide the best workplace culture. And LGBTQ plus workers are especially paying attention to the corporate culture, and they are looking for more than just inclusive, equal employment opportunity statement. It is beyond that. So LGBTQ plus equity involves many considerations, and that's why employers that have these practices in place for LGBTQ plus individuals, they gain the support and respect of not only that community, but also of other minority groups that recognize the efforts as an indicator of an overall inclusive work environment. And that's probably, like we've been mentioning here, what we are all asking for, that we can see that people may not be knowledgeable, but that they are making an effort to understand and show respect. And we can't ask for so much more. We're coming to an end, and I want to thank you all for attending this webinar. I truly hope even though this is short, this is most likely just the beginning of this discussion. And I hope we have all gained better awareness and more willingness to make an effort in supporting LGBTQ mental well-being in the workplace. And a special thanks to you, Rachel, for joining us today. And like I mentioned before, the webinar is recorded and it will be made available on the Cara Connect website and on our LinkedIn page. I will also make sure that all the additional resources we have mentioned and all the recommendation for further learning will be made available to all of you. Also reach out to us if there's anything. We should all keep focus on that support for our LGBTQ plus colleagues is not limited to Pride Month. Please continue to create an environment of inclusion and acceptance in your companies all year round, all over the world. We have all a part in building an inclusive workplaces. And for those of you who are not familiar with Cara Connect, we are a safe and secure GDPR compliant wellbeing platform that enables employees to access coaching, counseling, therapy, and other wellbeing services from experienced and accredited providers. Making a positive impact on people's well-being is what drives us forward. At Cara Connect, we believe happy employees are good for business, and we're committed to removing barriers to professional support. We are deeply focused on building an inclusive culture and a diverse team. We are equal parts women and men, tech and humanities, creative and linear, funny and focused. If you want to learn more about us, visit our Cara Connect website, caraconnect.com. Whether you are a part of a company who would like to embrace the health and well-being of their professionals or of their employees, or if you are a professional who would like to join us as a service provider, just get in touch. It's as simple as that. So thank you, all of you, for attending. Thank you, Rachel. And may your day be filled with happiness and open heart and mind. Thank you.